Okay, so let's start with the geometry node system, and geometry node is pretty new to Blender, but it's an incredibly powerful tool which allows you to do lots of very powerful things. So it's very good to get a basic understanding of how it works. So I'm going to start creating a grass system for you now, and you're going to follow along and we can create grass together, and hopefully by the end you've got an idea of the kind of things you can do with geometry nodes. So I basically want grass to go inside all of these pots here. So let's just focus on one for now. Let's go into edit mode with tab, click 3, and then we can select this face. Let's duplicate this with Shift D, bring it up on the Z axis, something like here, and then just press P to separate it. And now it's made it a separate object. Now we can select this on its own, and I think for now I'm just going to delete these modifiers just so we have a plane. So this is the plane we're going to work with. So now I'm going to go into local view, and then what we're going to do is we're going to start creating the grass. Now I've seen a few grass systems available for Blender online, and generally what they seem to have is just one plane, one blade of grass, like this piece, just one of those scattered on the ground. But what it actually is, grass usually comes as a bunch. So there's a bunch of grass here, bunch of grass. So we want to create basically a grass bunch and then scatter that over a surface. So what we can do for that is that if you go to ambientcg.com, and they have an incredible foliage grass maps. So if you remember when we created the plaster material, we basically used the plaster texture, and it also came with other maps as well. So it came with a roughness map, normal map, and these do as well. So there's a bunch you can choose from. I've got this one already downloaded, and this one comes with as well the base color, comes with a displacement, comes with a normal map, comes with an opacity map, and also comes with a roughness map. So it basically comes with everything that we need. So we're going to use that. But what we do need to create is the grass blades itself inside of Blender. So I'm going to go into front view, and I'm just going to click and drag this into the scene. So we can use this as a reference. Now this is a reference image and it won't show up in the render. So if I turn that off, this is basically invisible to the render, but it's very useful as just a reference. Now, if you're looking like this, then you drag it in, the plane's going to be at a weird angle. So whenever you add it in, make sure you go to the front view and then drag it in. And this is what we're going to use to model our grass on. So let's start with the first one. So we're just going to choose the most straightest one because it'll be easiest. And I'm just going to right click here, do Shift A, mesh, and add a plane. Now let's just go over to it and then go into edit mode and scale this in, and then we're going to rotate this on 90 degrees and keep scaling this in just so it's roughly like this. Now we're going to trace, I've just lost it. Let's just bring this out like this. Right, it doesn't need to be 100% accurate, but we can try to get as close as possible. So let's just bring these vertices over like this. I'm just clicking and pressing G to select and move. Then I'm going to press E to extrude this, and just something like this. You don't want to have too many polygons like this, otherwise it's going to start slowing it down because we're going to have millions and millions of grass blades. So just something like this. Maybe that's even too many. Let's just bring this straight up here just to the top first. Let's extrude this down, and we just want to go something like this. Actually, yeah, something like that should be enough for what we want to do. So actually, you could probably delete this. I want to delete this, but if I press delete edges, it's going to leave some vertices. So if I select it and press dissolve edges, it's going to just remove the edge and keep the rest of the stuff in place. So that's fine. Right then I'm going to duplicate this to the side, and then I'm going to go into object edit mode and just bring this over so it kind of fits to the shape. I might need to add a bit more geometry for this one, and then bring that over like that. Okay, let's duplicate this one. Let's bring this over here like this. Should we do this one as well? Yeah, might as well. Let's just do this and this, and then this, and then let's duplicate this as well. I'm just going to do maybe 5 of these and something like that. Now we do have a grass system already available over at iMesh, which has this already pre-made, and it took quite a lot of work, but we're going to do this a very quick version here. So if you want a more realistic version, and it's ready for you over at iMesh, but this is a very good system to learn, and this should be pretty realistic anyway at the end. So let's just bring this in. Just the one we created over at iMesh has a few more settings and a lot more variety. So let's just continue with this. Right then, I think this is fine for now. Right, so we've got some grass blades. So let's select all of them, and then let's unwrap them. So let's select these. I don't want to select this one, so I'm going to hold down B, I'm going to press B, hold down Shift, and then drag, and it will deselect that one. And then with all of these selected, I'm going to press Tab, and I'm going to select everything. Press U, and then I'm going to click Project from View. Because what that will do is under the UV editor, it's basically created an exact copy of what it looks like here. So if I was to do it like this, it's going to do the same thing. So it's basically projecting from the view. And we want it to follow this back image exactly. So it's very useful that we've already done it to the image. So we do UV project. Then we're going to find that foliage material, the texture. Then I need to put it in place, and then we can scale it in. So let's just move this over here, and it should align quite nicely. Let's bring this over here. And I want to scale it from this point. So let's press Shift, right click here, then go to the pivot point and choose the 2D cursor. Now if we scale, it should be able to scale it just so it goes over this nicely like that. Right then, so now I can just delete this, and we got some pieces of grass. And now if we go to render view, we still can't see the grass because we haven't told it which material to use. So let's go to materials, and let's go to add a new and call this grass. We need to make sure all of them have that material. So we can select all of them. With this one selected, because this one and this one does have the material, this one doesn't. Select one which does, and do Control L, and then click Link Material. Now all of them will have the same material. So let's go to the shader editor, and we want to add these textures in. So we want the base color, plug that into here, and we want the opacity, and the opacity will go into the alpha map, and we could just set this to non-color, and we're going to do that for all of the non-color information ones. And OpenGL for normal map. Let's drop this in here, set this to non-color as well, and we want to plug that into vector 8. Let's search for that vector normal map like this. And then what we want to have, is there any others? We can use the roughness map like this and plug that into here. Right, so now if we do preview, we can see that this grass now looks like grass. But there's some other things that grass needs so it can look more realistic. If you hold this up to the sun, we can't actually see, is that the sun over there? It's very, very small. If you hold the sun up to the grass, you can't see through it. But if you were to hold this up to grass to the sun in real life, you can actually see some light coming through. So, and that is through translucency. So let's add some translucent material to this. So we want to do A, and then type mix shader, plug that into here, then A, and then we want to type translucent, plug that into here. Then we can choose the same base color as the color, the same normal map as normal map, and now we can see some light is coming through. But you will notice that now the alpha map is coming back through. So where this one was cutting it off, so we can't see the grass, that's because it's using this alpha map. But when we plug it into this one, for some reason that material is coming back through. And that's because this translucent node on its own isn't actually using the opacity map. So we need this to have the same information. So when we plug this in, when you mix to this one also has transparency. So what we can do is we can add another mix shader. This time we want to add a transparent node. There we go. We can plug this opacity map into the factor here. And that is the inverse. So we need to switch these around, because basically what's happening here is if we were just let's remove this one, let's just clean this up a little bit just so it might be a little bit more obvious. So let's plug this into here. So what's going on here is that we're telling it that this is a black and white mask. So if I plug this into here, it's a black and white mask. So where it's white, we want the material to show. Where it's black, we don't want it to show. And that's, so basically this mix shader, how this works is that if it's black, it will use this one. If it's white, it will use this one. So if I plug this into here, it's going to be backwards, because this is saying that if it's white, it's going to be transparent, and if it's black, it's going to be translucent. So we need to switch these round like this. So now we can see that's working, and now we can give the translucent material back the color, and we can also give it the normal map, and now we can see it's working. But now we want to mix this back in with the translucent. So we can select this, duplicate this, duplicate this, and then drop these into here. plug that into here instead of the translucency. This might seem a little bit complex at first, but just basically create exactly what I've done here and it will work. So you have a mix shader with a transparency, you have a mix shader with a translucency and this one, and they all are sharing these textures here. So hopefully this makes some sense just by looking at it like this, right? Okay, so now we have a translucent material. Sometimes there is a certain map that you can use to tell it where it should be translucent and by how much, but we don't necessarily need that here. I think just adding a little bit translucency should just be nice enough. So that's letting some light through. Right then, so what should we do here? So we want to add some variety to this and make it look a bit more like these tufts of grass here. So what we're going to do is we're going to start bending them a little bit. So go to edit mode. I'm going to select these top two. I'm going to go to the side and I'm going to press O. And O is proportional editing, because if I was trying to move this like this on my own, it's going to take a little bit of time to gradually bend these over. But there's a tool for that, and that's called proportional editing. With that enabled, if I bring that over and use the middle mouse wheel to show a circle, which shows the circle of influence, we can very easily choose how this grass is going to look without having to edit everything in one go. So I can do that for this one. I can select these top for this one. I can do the same thing for this one. And this time maybe I choose sharper. So it's a different proportional editing look. So this one will bend over. I'm basically going to try to emulate what that looks like. We can do that. Select these and do something like this. Maybe something like this. Maybe a little bit of variety. And the more time you spend on this, the better this is going to look, of course. But this should be fine. Right, so now we have some variety. Maybe we also want to bend them over to the side, maybe a little bit like this. Maybe something like this. And this one maybe something like this, and this one like this. Right, so we've got starting to look like some grass tufts. Let's now start to create the shape. So let's bring these all together like this. Right then. And now we want to add some more. So let's select them all and duplicate it. Let's maybe rotate them all like this and then scale them a little bit. And then we could just move them all into place. It's a very quick way to just add some variety. There's some overlapping ones here, so let's just move this out of the way. This is also overlapping, so just move that out of the way. We can also edit these a little bit to give it a bit more space. And maybe move this over like this as well. Let's actually give them all a little bit more space. Right then, I would say that is one. And now we want to create multiple. So let's duplicate these over here like this. And then let's add some variety to these too. So we can just start editing these all around. So let's just actually select these ones and rotate this around, scale them down, just to add some quick variety. Select these ones and rotate this, scale them, and maybe you can edit these ones as well. And bring this over here like this. And bring this up, and this one, maybe bring this down a little bit like that. Right, that's another one, and let's do one more, and then if you want to do, the more you do, the more variety there will be. So I'm just going to create another one here. Let's like this. Let's duplicate that round like that. Make a slightly bigger one, and like that. Like this. Duplicate that, and then I'm going to scale these down, I think, just on the z-axis like that. Right, so we've got three different sizes, and this is maybe too big, like that should be fine. And then I'm going to just join these all together. So I'm going to select all of them, make sure one of them is brighter. Otherwise, if you just select them all with, like for example, this one, then I select these, none of them have a lighter color. So if I try to do Control J to join, nothing's going to work because there isn't an active object, but now there is. So let's join these, and we do this one as well, Control J. And we do this one as well, and we could do Control J. For all of them, let's just select them all and do Shade Smooth. Shade Smooth, there we go. And we could just name these. So we could just call this Grass 1. We call this one Grass 2. And we can call this one Grass 3. Now I want to move these all to the same, basically the same folder. So when we make the geometry node system, it will know which folder to use, so it knows which objects to scatter. So actually let's also make sure that the origin point is in the center, because the origin point is here, and that's going to be important for geometry nodes that it is in the center. So let's just go into edit mode, select all with A, and move this so that this center point's in the center, and just check this one, do the same thing over here, just move that to the center, and just check this one as well. I think that's basically center anyway. Right, so we're going to move these to their own folder, so select them all, and we can just do M, new collection, and call this grass. There we go. Now that's in its own grass collection. So now it's time to make the geometry node system in which these grass will be scattered over the surface. So let's go back into local view, and we can have a look at this object. So we want to go to geometry nodes editor. Right, and so what we see here is a group input, which says geometry, and that goes to a group output. So basically that is saying the geometry that's going in, we want the same geometry to go out. So if I unplug this, there's no output geometry. And we can also change a few things to this. So what we can also do is we can add another node, such as Shift A, distribute points on faces, and drop that in here. Now we can see that this group, this has changed. So the original plane that we had, so this geometry input, which is plugged into here, has disappeared, because what this node does is it scatters a bunch of points all over the surface. So if we increase the density, loads and loads and loads, we start to see the shape of the plane. Also, if we go to edit mode for the plane, we can change where these shapes appear as well. But we are missing the plane now. So how do we get the plane back? So no matter what we do over here, we want to join the two together. So we want to distribute the faces, and we want to see the original geometry. So I want to do Shift A, I'm going to type in join geometry. I can plug that into here, then I can plug both here. So now we get the plane back, and we have the distribute points on faces. We can see both, which is pretty useful, but we want to, instead of these points, we want it to actually be the grass instead. So with these points that have been created, that's basically randomly generated points by geometry nodes. And this is almost like a point cloud, but that's not what we want. We want it to be the grass instead. So what we can do is we say a search, we can do instances on points. So we can tell it, instead of the points, we want to replace the points with an instance of another object. So we can do Shift A, we can go to mesh, we can go to primitives, and we can say cube, and we can plug that cube into the instance, and we can scale that cube down. And now anywhere there's a point, there's going to be a cube instead. Let's just press M to mute that. And now we see the spheres of the points. Now we press M again, now we get the cubes. Now instead of the cubes, we can actually add a piece of grass. So if we drag this grass over here, we can plug that into here, and now we get the grass. But what we can also do is actually tell it that we want the whole collection to be instance as well. So we plug that into there. We can see for some reason the grass is all the way over there. That's because the origin points of these objects are different to the origin of this point. So let's just quickly fix that. Let's click on this object. We can see the origin points over here. So just do Shift S, cursor to selected. Select this one, do selection to cursor, selection to cursor, and selection to cursor. There we go. But now we can see that the object for some reason is still not quite in the right place, and that's because we need to choose relative. But before I move forwards, I'm actually going to disconnect this collection because I need to show you something else first about how this will distribute this collection over it. Basically, we need to do some randomization, which will be easier to see with another collection. So let's just add a cone and bring this, and then we're going to add a cube, and then we're going to add a sphere. Right, let's just move these to a new collection call that primitives, and click OK. Then for this one, I'm going to add this primitives collection instead. Click relative and plug that into instance. So now we can see these are instance over here instead. We can actually scale these down so we can start to see the individual ones. And we can see actually what's happening is that each point is distributing the whole collection over the top. We couldn't quite see that with the grass, but it's a bit easier to see with this. So we can see that all of the grass is going to be instance on one point, which isn't correct. We basically want to choose a random object for each point. So what we can do is we can click pick instance and then click separate children. And now it looks like it's going to be randomizing the object. So it's going to decide which object to display on each point. But we might need to add a bit more variety because it doesn't actually add 100% randomness. So let's just do a Shift A and let's type in random value. Set this to an integer as a random value. Set this to 3. So 0, 1, 2. So this is 3 values, and plug that into instance index. And now add a bit more randomness to this scene. So now if we delete this and plug this one instead, we can see there is some grass. The grass is too big, so we can change that by adjusting the scale here. So we can scale this down like this. And now we can see that there is random grass distributed on each point. But one thing we do need to do is add a bit more randomness to this. So we can rotate these on the z-axis. Rotating them on the z and x and y won't really make much sense because grass generally goes straight up. But we can randomize this value here. So we can add another random value node. Just click on the one you want, Shift D, random value, and we want to choose a vector, and we can just plug that into the random rotation. And now this is saying that it's going to randomize from 0 to 1. So let's just turn these off. And then the only one that's going to be randomized is this one here. Now this is using radians, not degrees. So even though you're rotating it a very, very small amount, it's going to be rotating it at a multiplier of 3.14, I believe. So 3.14 is randomized between 0 and 360 degrees. And then what we can also do is also randomize this by the scale as well. So plug that into there. So we're going to say that it can randomize from 0 and 1.5. But we can see this hasn't quite worked because some of them are kind of squashed. The reason why is because the XYZ is randomizing between 0 and 1. So the X on its own is going to go between 0 and 1. The Y is going to go between 0 and 1. And same with the Z. But we want them all to be in a uniform value. So if we delete that, we could just duplicate this one. And we could just choose a float value and we plug that one in instead. So now this will go between 1, so let's say 0.5 and 1. So you can make some really, really small if you want to and some really, really big, but generally they're going to be roughly the same size. So something like this should be fine. Maybe you want to choose a slightly higher value, something like that. Actually, let's just let's do 0.2 and then 0.5. Right then, now we want to add a little bit more density. So let's choose something like this. But the problem with this random distribution is that it's going to be, some of them are going to be overlapping. So what we can do is choose Poisson disk, which if I just show you this one, you can tell it that you want to have a minimum distance between all of them and a maximum density. So we could turn this all up really, really high, but we can change the minimum distance. So we can choose a value, something like this. Let's actually just, let's delete this viewer node. We can actually see, have a look here. So we can try to stop the overlapping. We could just decrease this a little bit. And we can see that the base of them isn't going to be overlapping, but the grass will be, but that should be fine. So now if we go to render preview, we should start seeing some nice grass here. I might add a little bit more variety to the rotation here, maybe 0.002 as well on the X and Y, so they don't go straight up. Now we can also decrease, maybe choose 0.4 here and increase the density a lot, but decrease this to maybe 0.005 and increase the density some more. Let's just type in 10,000. Okay, maybe there's too many. It's 5,000. Let's do 2,500. Right, I think that's looking pretty good. I think I might add a little bit more randomness, 0.1, and I think that should be fine for now. Let's just see how this is going to look in the scene. So with this one selected, I'm going to press tab and I'm going to go in edit mode. So now I've just selected the plane itself. Now if I duplicate this, now you'll see that the geometry node system is also going onto this second plane as well. If I select all of them, press Shift D, duplicate this, and I can bring this over here as well. Now let's say you've got millions and millions and millions, and you might find the scene is slowing down. You can go to here and change it here, but you can also expose a value to be displayed in the geometry nodes modifier as well. So if I plug this density into here, we can see the value has appeared here. So I can adjust it, all the values here, if I wanted to set this to 10, this could be a lot less, and I can increase the value here as well. So this makes it a little bit easier sometimes if you want to adjust, if there's some values which you will be adjusting quite a lot. to adjust them here. So I can also change the maximum value. I can expose that, so I can basically create my own tool here. But that's not so important. I think for now this should be fine. So now I can go to render preview and see how this is looking. You can see you've got some nice grass going on here. Maybe this is a bit too dense, so let's just choose this to 2000. What about 1000 even? I want to basically see some more variety in the grass. And like I said, there is some grass available on iMesh for our subscribers if you wanted to get your hands on grass which has a lot more variety in it. But for this, I think this is a very good introduction to a geometry node system. And I'm actually going to bring this up a little bit because some of the grass is poking through. Actually, what I'm going to do is I'm going to go to edit mode, and then I'm going to select all with A. I'm going to go to individual origins, so I can individually scale all of the faces without scaling them all together like that. So I'm going to do individual origins. I'm going to scale it on the x-axis and scale it on the y-axis. So now we can see that there'll be a bit less shining coming through the wall. Let's just bring this up a little bit, and there we go. Right, actually I also see the grass is actually going through the plane. So what I'm going to do is actually select these bits of grass, and then I'm just going to bring them up so they are actually touching the base of the plane, and then I can actually bring the plane down again. Let's bring this down like that. Alright, now as I said, there is maybe a bit of a problem that this plane is white, when in actual fact it'd probably be a dirt color. So what I'm going to do is select this plane. I'm going to go to material and remove the plaster material, but I'm going to click new. Then I need to go over to the shader editor, and then I want to give it a dirt material. So I'm going to go here again and type in dirt, and then I'm going to find a dirt material that I like, and then I'm going to add that to my scene. So I found one that I like. I'm just going to use this dirt color here, plug that into here. I'm going to find the roughness, plug that into the roughness, and I'm going to get the normal map and plug that into the normal map. Now I have seen some people asking if it's cheating to be using ready-made textures, but that is what every single company in the whole world does. Every single 3D studio will be using texture maps. So please do make use of them. They are the fastest and most accurate and best way to add materials. Actually, I want to add a bit more density to this grass, and something like that should be fine. Let's actually scale these out a little bit more, get these a bit closer to the edge. Right, that should be fine. And then the last thing I want to do is also now make a plane for the back box as well. So let's just select this plane, Shift D to duplicate, R to rotate 90 degrees, and then I'm just going to scale this out on the x-axis. There we go. Now we have some geometry nodes grass, and I think this is looking pretty good. I think maybe the grass is a little bit too big still, so I'm going to make this a little bit smaller by going to geometry nodes. I'm going to set the minimum. I'm going to unhide this just so I can do it all here. I'm going to set this to 0.05, and then maybe set this to 0.2. But then I do need to increase the density, so I'm just going to go to here and increase that to say 6000. Now do watch out, the more you add, the slower your viewport's going to get, because if you imagine, this is millions and millions of blades of grass now, or you could just hide it from the viewport if it's going too slow. Right then, that's great, but we can still see the grass here, so I'm just going to disable that here. Now that's hidden and it won't be rendered, it's basically completely disabled. Also, let's just delete this or hide this so it's just hidden. Right, there we have it. We have some grass. I think there is maybe a bit too much repetition going on here in some places, so it will be ideal if you do just create more grass blades, maybe make some which are more flat, maybe some bigger clumps, but in general I think this is a really good start. But if you've got this far with geometry nodes, then you're going to be an expert in no time, and hopefully you get an idea of the power of what's possible. There's like ultimate randomization that you can create to your scene. Right then, so what I think we're going to do now is that I think we're going to add the hill in the background, and we're going to start adding some props, and then we can get onto the rendering and move on from there.